So the question is, how do we make that space I've mentioned a couple of times so we can still experience these things, but have room for other stuff, right? One of the ways we do this is awareness of what's going on, right? Observing what's happening. But this is all connected to something else that I call resistance. Because if we're having a worry about something, and then we start to feel resistance to that thing. Let's use my wife's health as an example. You know, I'm worried about her health, and then I'm also having this resistance that she's sick. And what resistance does is it, as it might make sense, it pushes us away from accepting what is. And resistance can also put us in a place where we are not fully in the moment. So the way I like to look at resistance is it's something that comes up. You know, if someone tells you what to do, there might be an immediate resistance like, oh yeah, don't tell me what to do, right? That's a very basic form of resistance. Whereas if somebody says, hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? How should we handle it? Now, resistance is much less likely to rear its head because you're being asked a question and you're being asked your opinion. So in life, when something comes up, like somebody gets sick, you weren't really asked, what's your opinion here? It just came into your life. And we can also often feel resistance to that occurrence when it happens. So for me, resistance is multi-layered. So like cooking breakfast is something I have resistance to. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't like to cook. So there's resistance on that level. So in the morning, I get up, I exercise, I meditate, and then I go and get to cook. And as soon as I go into the kitchen, I start feeling this resistance to cooking. And I realize it's not just about the fact that I don't like to cook. It's about the fact that my wife is not well enough to cook that meal. And then that brings up the resistance I have to her illness, to the situation, to the fact that I don't want to have to be a caregiver. I didn't choose this. And all of a sudden, this resistance starts to mount and become stronger. Resistance can be to a future event or something that might happen. And we've talked about that a bit. That's fear and worry. What's a future-centric concern? How am I going to do this next week? Or what if my wife dies? You know, there's resistance. There's to that future event, which may or may not happen, right? There's resistance to something that is, like whatever condition the person you are caregiver is experiencing. And this is going to run the gamut, right? Because if you're a nurse or a doctor or a caregiver of some kind, massage therapist, potentially a psychotherapist, right? Psychiatrist, that's caregiver. And that's going to have different stressors and different triggers for you, different trauma that might come upon you as a caregiver than might occur with someone who is caring for their parent or their spouse, right? But either way, we need to learn how to cope with the caregiver role in a way that's healthy. Being aware of what you're feeling, of what you're thinking, of observing it. That's one way. Noticing when you're feeling resistance, even if it doesn't go away, that's okay. The fact that you are observing yourself or noticing that you are resistant to X, Y, and Z is progress. And it's very important to be kind to yourself as you work through this.